Hey there, I'm Erin Harner, gut health, IBS, and SIBO coach. And if you've ever taken digestive enzymes and thought, are these doing anything? This video is for you. So let's break down what digestive enzymes do, when they help, and when they're just unnecessary expensive supplements. Because I get a lot of questions from clients and potential clients about the role of enzymes and whether they're helpful, not helpful. So let's break it down so you can figure out if they're right for you. So first, let me explain what enzymes are. I'd like to think about enzymes like fancy specialty craft scissors. My mother-in-law is really into scrapbooking, and she has all of these fancy scissors. Some of them have zigzag edges, some have scalloped edges, some are for the edges of paper, some are for the middle of paper, some make fancy borders. They all have specific purposes. And enzymes are very similar to this. They only cut in certain places for certain purposes. So we have different enzymes that break down proteins, different ones that break down carbohydrates, and different ones that break down fats. Generally, these all end in ACE, A-S-E, and these are known as proteases for proteins typically, amylases for carbohydrates, and lipases for fats. Remember, they're like these specialty craft scissors. I also like to think about enzymes cutting up these proteins, fats, and carbs into smaller pieces so that the body can digest them and absorb them. You need the right scissors for the right job. Fats, proteins, and carbs are all broken down by different enzymes. In our mouth, in our saliva, we have amylase, and this is the start of the breakdown of carbohydrates. So if we're chewing our food and we're chewing, and it's mixing with saliva, that's actually the beginning of the breakdown of carbohydrates. Amylase is released in your mouth. In the stomach, we have pepsin. Doesn't end in ACE, but it's an enzyme, and it helps break down proteins. So carbohydrates begin in the mouth, protein digestion begins in your stomach. Next up, we have the small intestine. And in the small intestine, we have a release of lots and lots of enzymes by the pancreas. And these are referred to as pancreatic digestive enzymes. So how do we know if you're low in enzymes and if you even need these things anyway? You can actually measure pancreatic enzymes using a stool test. So I use a specific stool test that is very helpful because in there it has elastase 1. This is a proxy of pancreatic enzyme production. If pancreatic elastase is high, we know there's lots of pancreatic enzymes. Great. If pancreatic elastase is low, we know that pancreatic enzyme production is struggling, and we need to dig deeper and figure out why. So if it's low, that's a signal that there's enzyme insufficiency and likely poor digestion, especially of fats. Remember that all the enzymes are like these specialty craft scissors. And if we don't have enough enzymes produced, we don't have the scissors to cut down all the different carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And that can result in digestive trouble. Either gas and bloating and constipation and diarrhea can all be related to insufficiency of enzymes. But how do we know if we need to take these or not? So let's dig into the 3 different types of enzymes that I use most in my practice. And I will just mention here that there are 2 types of enzymes that I'm not going to talk about. One is systemic enzymes and one is brush border enzymes. But these are the main categories. We've got pancreatic enzymes, we've got gluten dairy digestive enzymes, and we also have FODMAP digestive enzymes. So let me dig into each of those a little bit more. So pancreatic enzymes are the ones that you would typically find on a grocery store, health food store shelf. I also have a number in my dispensary. These are the ones I use the most, and they're generally broad spectrum. So if you notice that you feel really heavy, lethargic after you eat, these might be most helpful as a place to start. So remember that these enzymes must contain all of the different pancreatic enzymes. So enzymes that break down proteins, enzymes that break down carbohydrates, and enzymes that break down fats. And they all have different ones in different quantities, and you just have to figure out which one might be best for you. These are really helpful if your digestion is sluggish, if you feel really full or kind of icky after a meal, or if you know that your pancreas isn't producing enough enzymes because we measured elastase 1, for example. So sometimes these enzymes are called broad spectrum enzymes, and other times they are paired with specific compounds like hydrochloric acid, also known as stomach acid, or sometimes even ox bile. Sometimes you'll find all 3 together, sometimes a pairing of just 2 of those, or just the enzymes alone. So that's something to keep an eye out for. Next up, we have the gluten and dairy digestive enzymes. Believe it or not, gluten's a really difficult protein to digest. For those who are sensitive and not for celiac, what we want to look for with gluten and dairy digestive enzymes, they need to contain something called DPP4, which is actually an enzyme, specific craft scissors that cut the gluten proteins to help with digestion so it doesn't cause so much GI distress in the small intestine. Something else that's also commonly found in these gluten and dairy digestive enzymes is things that break down dairy products. Lactase, which will break down lactose, and casein. There's certain enzymes that help break down the main protein in milk, also known as casein. So those can be very helpful if someone knows that they have a sensitivity to dairy, lactose, or gluten, but not for celiacs. You wouldn't want to use that unless it was mitigating trouble if you were eating out. The third category that I use fairly often in my practice is FODMAP digestive enzymes. And these are new players on the market. There's a couple brands that have really stood out that are pretty great. And these really help break down those tricky carbohydrates that tend to ferment like crazy in the small or large intestine. And these are the fructans, the galactans, the lactose, and the fructose. These do not break down polyols. So if you have issues with like sorbitol or mannitol, they're not going to be very helpful there. However, they can be super, super helpful for people who are reactive to FODMAPs. I don't see them as a long-term solution, but certainly short-term, they can be very, very helpful. Again, you've got to choose the right scissors for the right job. But what if the enzymes don't work? What if you try one of these enzymes and you're like, that wasn't very helpful? What do you do then? I would ask the question, why? Why isn't this working? Why isn't it helping? Maybe it's the wrong scissors for the wrong job. And this is what I see pretty often. Or you're not taking enough of the product to actually be enough pairs of scissors to break down all the foods that you're trying to break down. Like let's say you have a large meal and you have lots of gluten in your meal, for example. You need lots of that DPP4, all those gluten cutting scissors to break down the gluten so it doesn't cause a lot of digestive distress. So you have to have enough of the product to do the job, and you've got to have the right product to do the job. DPP4 to break down gluten is going to do nothing for you if the problem is fructans, for example, which is a compound that's found in wheat, next to gluten, but it's not gluten. It's a carb. Gluten is a protein. So it's really important to figure out what the actual problem is. We have to dig deeper. And that's why so many people will take digestive enzymes and get very little benefit. They're either not taking enough or they're taking the wrong product. Or maybe the enzymes isn't the problem in the first place. So it's really important to figure out what is actually going on down there, getting to the root, understanding it, and then taking the right product for the right job. You've got to have the right scissors. If you want to have a nice scalloped border of your craft paper, you need the scallop scissors. The zigzag ones just aren't going to cut it. So it can feel hit or miss when you're just experimenting with different supplements. You've got to take the right product for the right job. And so many people are taking these expensive, they're very expensive supplements, and you've got to take them with every meal for them to work. So we're taking these expensive supplements every meal for long periods of time and getting really burnt out because you're constantly taking fistfuls of supplements and they're not doing the job that you want. You're not getting the results. So what do we do instead, right? We've got to understand what the root causes are. What's underlying? What's the actual problem? Do you have sufficient enzyme output? Do you have food triggers? Do you have gut function issues? Do you have gut dysfunction? I teach all of these in my free masterclass, so if you're interested in that, I would strongly encourage you to check it out. I'll put the link below. And if you've tried everything and you still feel stuck, this is definitely your next step. So I encourage you to watch that free class, and if you want, you can book a call with me. I work with women who are ready to finally get rid of bloating, constipation, diarrhea, and food fear for good, so they can get on with their lives without symptoms and carry on and feel good in their bodies again. So if that's you, let's get to the root and rebuild your gut from the inside out. I hope that helps you better understand what's going on with digestive enzymes, when they could be helpful and when they're not so helpful, and also when to dig deeper. We'll talk to you soon, friends. Bye.